What are your pronouns?
Oh, my pronouns are she, her.
She, her. Okay. I'm gonna ask you again. I just wanted to make sure I didn't misgender you in the
No, it's
intro.
okay. You're completely fine.
In the Hi everyone, welcome to the newest episode of Therapy is a Drag. I'm your host, Sarah Quill, and I'm joined by...
Rena.
I'm joined with Rena. She is a good friend of my fiance, more of a client really, but a friend too. My fiance is an esthetician and Rena is a client. I'm very excited to have her here. This is my first stranger guest because we haven't met until, about a half hour ago. So I'm really excited. Rena, if you want to introduce yourself, share your pronouns and any other identifiers about yourself that you want to share.
Sure. So I'm Rena. My pronouns are she, her. At the moment, I'm a student at Davis, so I work in math and coding and all that. I also am chronically ill. I'm autistic, and I'm running out of things to say.
Totally fine.
We can go from there.
Yeah. If anything else comes up, you can always interrupt and share. But I'm so glad to have you here, and I'm really excited to learn more about your experience with therapy. So the first question is, are you currently in therapy?
Yes. Yeah.
How long have you been with your current therapist?
About 2 years.
Okay, nice. 2 years. And how long, cumulatively, have you been in therapy?
So 5 years,
5 years?
I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Nice, yeah. 5 years is a lot of time to be in therapy. We were talking a little bit before we started recording, and you mentioned that you wanted to share a little bit about your experience or experiences that led up to you seeking therapy and your experience with working around the VA or the currently enlisted version of healthcare for the Army. So I'd love
Air Force.
Of the Air Force. Pardon me. Put some respect on the air. They're the smart ones, aren't they?
Yeah, no, that's exactly
They're the smart ones. But your experience with that system and finding healthcare and therapy. So if you want to jump in and tell us a little bit more about that, I'm super intrigued.
So I first started getting therapy it was the end of high school during COVID. Of course, that creates a barrier because, as you know, we are in what they call a therapy drought. So it's really hard to find people who are actually qualified to be therapists and people in your area who take your insurance, which is something that a lot of people relate to, especially nowadays. But for me, it's just we're kind of in the middle of buttfuck nowhere. So it happens. Yeah. And my first therapist, at the time I was coming to the terms of being neurodivergent. And so I started with, I've done a few different types of therapy that we can kind of talk about. Yeah. But I had to count yesterday. I've been through 6 therapists.
Okay.
Which is kind of a lot for 5 years. But some of them I only saw for a short time, and some of them were actually long term. And so I'm trying to figure out how to lay out the timeline before.
Okay, yeah.
So what would your next question be?
Next question is your experience with your current therapist, and if you'd like them.
It might be useful to work backwards.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so my current therapist, I love her. I've had her for 2 years. She is in San Diego, so I've never actually had in-person therapy, which in many ways I really enjoyed because it's nice to be able to stay in your place of comfort
100%,
rather than have to go somewhere and meet a stranger. Yeah. For an hour or 50 minutes.
50 minutes, whatever. Yeah. 50 minutes to an hour. Yeah.
You get the extra 10 minutes if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And so I had to find her through psychology today, which is what we've all done. I do love that you can filter on psychology today. So do you see that they have videos now?
Yeah, they have little video intros for you to
Do you watch them?
I watched a couple this morning. I was helping a friend find a new therapist over the phone, and there were some that were really good, and there were some that were a little Did you know what you were getting into before you started recording? Because it doesn't seem like you're very comfortable.
You did one take.
Yeah. You should have gone back, redone it, but oh well.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Psychology Today has the videos now.
And so I specifically at the time, my doctors had recommended that I look for a sex therapist, which is a very random one.
Yeah.
It's one that like people don't hear often, especially when it comes to therapy. It's funny because I feel like sex therapy really should be more implemented because so many people have negative responses to sex. Yeah. It's something that should really be more incorporated. And also, you would be surprised how many therapists don't know how a vagina works.
Yeah.
Even the female ones.
Yeah.
I'm like, do we have to bring out a diagram?
Yeah. Do I have to show you on a screen what it looks like?
PowerPoint?
Yeah. I feel like that does bring up a very good point, is that even this morning when I was trying to help my friend, there's such a disconnect between like what people are looking to get out of a therapist or a specialization that they're looking for, and people that are truly specialized in it. Because anyone can put that they have experience or are interested in working with people that have some sort of sexual therapeutic need, or even like addiction, which is what I was helping my friend with earlier. And even though they say it on Psychology Today, it doesn't mean that they're a specialist. It just means that they can work with those people.
Yeah.
So with that said, what was your experience with finding a sex therapist, and how many people did you have to try out before you found someone that worked with your needs?
So my sex therapy needs are significantly more medical. So again, I'm trying to think of if I should just start from the beginning. So I ended up being diagnosed with bipolar and OCD sometime in between like my senior year of high school and my freshman year of college. And within that time, like I had a therapist who I was very parental with in many ways. Like she was definitely more of a mom, which is not what you want looking back. And like it was definitely more like I'm latching onto this person as a coping mechanism rather than like you are a paid professional who's going to give me advice on what to do in my life.
Yeah.
And so it eventually just, my parents really wanted to know what I was doing in therapy, and they emailed, and I was over 18 and she told them everything. So at that point, that kind of trust was broken. And I was like, you know what, I have to like take a break from therapy. I took a break for a few months. I found another one. She was neurotypical. She was nice. I really don't remember much, but I know I was with her for like 6 months. Yeah. And then she was previously a high school counselor. So she ended up going back to school to work at the high school and going full time there. And then, of course, you're like, I have to find a new therapist. So she goes, well, I have a recommendation. I'm like, I'll take your recommendation. I meet this woman and she just has this vacant look in her eyes as I tell her everything. And she goes, you know, you have some weird vibes.
Huh?
And I was like, wait, I'm the weird vibes here? It was so strange. Jeez. So then I'm like, okay, I can't do this. I go to the military. I go, military, get me a therapist. And of course they come back with like just some of the strangest people you ever meet. Because military people in general are weird, especially veterans. Like if you've actually had to deploy, you're gonna have a very different approach to emotion.
100%, yeah.
But around the time between me having to search for this military therapist, I was having chronic illness issues before. Like I knew something was wrong. And every time I went to the doctor, they were like, all your tests came back negative. You have a history of bipolar and OCD. Maybe you could be manic and you might not know it. Maybe you're fishing for medication. And like you run into all of these stereotypes. And so I have to start, like eventually it's just, I'm having like strange inflammatory issues. But at a certain point, like I start having bladder issues too, like of just feeling like you have to pee, for instance. And so eventually in 2022, I had to get catheterized.
Oh no.
My cat woke me up at 5 a.m. and I had to spend 3 days catheterized.
Oh, gosh.
And so after that, like, then you have doctors take you seriously at that point. You start going to the gynecologist. You're like, maybe it has something to do with that. But like, it's just, I kept hitting walls every single time of like, well, you can't, we don't know what's wrong with you because we can't test you because you don't want to sit still. And also, like, there's not many tests that you can do. For instance, like endometriosis, you can only, there's no test. You just have to cut someone open and look. Yeah, it's straight surgery. And it's still pretty invasive. Keyhole surgery. Yeah. And so I went through, you know, all these different gynecologists who had all these different ideas on what women's health was. They, you know what I mean? They were like, well, maybe you need a different type of birth control. But like, so I kept saying like, you know, you need to do, for instance, like a pap smear. And they're like, well, we can't do it while you're awake because like it's too uncomfortable. Like, okay. So then you have to start fighting for someone to put you under anesthesia, which is a new healthcare barrier. Yeah. So expensive. And eventually I end up with this male gynecologist. Never had a male gynecologist before. So you would, yes or no? He's a urogynecologist, and he goes, well, I think you have bladder inflammation. Cool. He goes, I'll put you under anesthesia and look at it. Great. And I go, can you like make sure like down there, like let's do as much as we can because I can only go under anesthesia really once. Like you need to look for everything. And so he goes, if we find anything interesting, can we bring the residents in? Like, sure, you're not going to find anything interesting. It's not happening. And I go under anesthesia. There's maybe like 10 people in the room, like because you know you have to have like a. And I love it because, like, of course, during surgeries, you can play any music you want. So you're, like, hearing Usher as you're being put to sleep.
That's so funny.
It's, like, apparently they rotate playlists.
Here in the OR, we like to get down.
Yeah, exactly. And so I wake up and there's so many people in the room.
Oh, that's so scary.
And so they go, well, your bladder, we didn't like find anything. Because eventually they put a camera and they try to look. And he goes, but when we were trying to give you the pap smear, like we couldn't figure out how to do it. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, we tried 3 different sizes of speculums and nothing worked. What the fuck are you talking about? And so apparently they brought in every gynecologist like in the hospital. And of course they brought in the gynecologist in the labor and delivery ward. Imagine you're pregnant, you're mid-giving birth, and they go, there's something interesting in the other room. Yeah. And so they go like, you know, we think you have a double vagina. It's like, okay. Fuck are you talking about?
Like, what does that mean?
You can't just lead with that. And they said, well, okay, so you feel like I need a whiteboard. So we see how the female reproductive system is just like one canal and then you hit the cervix, right? This is very crude drawing.
Yes.
So in this case, like this would be the whole vaginal canal. It's where you have a period, blah, blah, blah. Mine, when this is completely, this was hereditary. So this was when I was born. I had a huge blockage right here. And so it covered up 80%. And I got 10 and 10. So when I had my first period, I was like, hey, tampons are scary. So they were like, so this is what we call a double vagina. And I was like, so you have technically two vaginal canals. I didn't know. And then, of course, they go, but we couldn't take pictures of it. Our camera's broken. So how do you have proof when you go to the next doctor and you say, I have a double vagina, I need this thing out of me? And I was like, you couldn't take like an iPhone picture? Like, fuck, come on, man. And so at this point, they're also like, well, clearly you have really bad pelvic issues because of all of this. And you need to be in like intense physical therapy. And also like, clearly you might want to be in some actual therapy too. At this point, like you've been through, I mean, after like 4 gynecologists, you're over it.
Yeah. I feel like one experience with a gynecologist might be traumatic in its own way, and having to go through that cycle of trying to find someone that'll, help you figure out what's going on is pretty rough.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so, of course, then I have to, especially many of the issues I've been confronted with in therapy have been the idea of like having people believe you and having like being able to trust yourself and trust your own body and saying like, I was literally told this by a doctor. I don't know why you're trying to tell me that I'm like insane.
I feel like that kind of experience reminds me of like the unreliable narrator in a book where you don't know if you can trust your own like memory or anything like that, and bringing that into therapy is kind of like having to work through reassuring yourself that what you experienced is real, and it's such a hard thing to process.
It's crazy. And so I realize like this insane event has happened to me. Like this is not something that anyone has really been able to relate to.
Yeah.
And so I like then you start searching for a therapist again. Loop back around to that.
Yeah.
For context, it did take me 10 months to get the surgery that I needed because I kept having to. I think I went through like maybe 3 more. Maybe not 3, but like a few more gynecologists after that. And I ended up having to get the surgery like in SoCal.
Oh, wow.
So, but this therapist, the military assigned ones, again, always a bit weird, can be sex therapists without actually being sex therapists. She just was really into the vagina monologues. You know what those are?
Yes.
Yeah. And she goes, this all sounds really hard. Here's a YouTube link.
Oh my God. This isn't in my expertise, but here's a fake referral to a YouTube video. Yeah.
Here's Broadway.
Yeah, here's a cop out, but maybe it'll help you.
And at a certain point, I'd have like quite a few sessions with her, and I was like, she's not even looking at me. Oh my God, she's looking at the clock.
Oh no. That's so awful.
And I was over it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I quit. I'm not getting a new therapist until I find one I really like. I go through Psychology Today. I'm looking for like the most liberal, like science-based, sex positive, I have like the list going. And once they say that, you kind of realize like, oh, it's I don't know if like messaging, to say that like, hey, maybe this is because therapists at this point, especially most sex therapists with private practices, they can work with whoever they want to work with.
Yeah.
If you get that far, you have a lot of options.
Yeah.
And so eventually I emailed her. She was like, I'm not taking any new clients. Oh. And then I dropped double vagina and she went, are you open on Monday?
That's so funny. I mean, good for you.
Yeah. It's like, am I important enough to get in?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because they're random. And like, of course, I had to, like, I'm on Reddit going like, is this real? It is. But the only people who know about it were doulas.
Oh. Yeah.
Apparently you can have double vaginas and get pregnant.
Really?
And then you can't deliver the baby.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So then what? You have to C-section, right?
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
But like,
I feel like that brings up a really good point about private practice too, is that if people have this very like unique knowledge or unique experience, I feel like people might upcharge for that. Was that it in your experience where was the sex therapist taking insurance or was it out of pocket?
Luckily she took insurance.
Okay.
It took a lot of figuring that out. The problem is that so the insurance is called TRICARE. Military insurance. It's a pretty specialized insurance. Like you either take it or you don't. And like TRICARE is trying to get them to approve at least anything right now in the last 6 months has been terrible. They switched providers and so now no one can get anywhere they need to go. And apparently it's going to be like that for another year. Cool. And so I tried to it took a lot of like getting the personal phone numbers of the people in insurance who I can contact whenever I need the thing that I need. Like it took a lot of time listening to the little jazz music on the other end.
The worst hold music
and being
ever.
like, it can't be a regular therapist, man. It has to be this one. Like, it has to be someone who knows how bodies work, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I talked about therapist matching with the last guest, but I feel like this is such a unique situation that even if you are interacting with therapists or doctors that have that unique knowledge about your experience, it's so like individualized to you that you have to get into the situation where you try this person out and kind of test their knowledge or their understanding, and it puts you, I feel like that might put you in a weird situation where you like get through the whole like, hi, my name is, here's my story, blah blah blah, and then you have to go further and further in, and then you're like, oh damn it, this
if you remove any bit of context, it changes their entire response. Because you can't just say like, oh, I have reproductive issues. It could be anything.
It's because that could mean any number of things. And if someone is like, I specialize in reproductive issues, and you're like, maybe not this reproductive issue. Well, let me tell you what it is before you come out so confidently.
And so like it just at this point you get really used to telling the story. But to be fair, like if I'm gonna survive the story, I'm gonna get to tell the story. You know, like I get to make my own narrative, but also like, I mean, come on, it's too fucking crazy not to share. You know?
And I mean, just from like the intake that you wrote and just from what Paige told me, because I looked at the intake and I was like, what is a double vagina? I think it's so wonderful that you're comfortable sharing it, and it sounds like you have some pride about sharing it, and I think that is such an incredible thing, because for a lot of people I feel like we're ashamed of our our mental health, and we're ashamed of our physical health, but coming at it with such a positive like viewpoint, I think is inspirational.
I think when it comes to a lot of therapy, like they kind of, the umbrella is the mindfulness, right? I feel like that's what literally every therapist tells you. But to me, that doesn't mean anything. So you have to, like, you end up in such a specialized situation where, like, a lot of different people have helped me get to where I am. But, like, not all of those people have been positive.
You don't have to get where you are. I feel like you have to go through the positive and negative, like the ups and downs of everything, whether it's therapy, whether it's, you know, physical health care and everything like that. Because I know in my case with my bipolar diagnosis, it was, I had a shitty therapist, and it made me more appreciative of the positive therapist that I had, who was able to help me, you know, grasp a much more full understanding of the experiences that I was having, and also help me process the negative experience I had with the therapist before.
Because you can, especially, there's a sense of distancing yourself would be the incorrect, but definitely taking yourself out of the situation and still being able to validate what's going on. And like that's something that definitely, it actually took, I think, multiple therapists for me to understand, and multiple experiences talking with different people.
For sure.
But I also think that, like, when it comes to it's less of a pride, but it's more kind of like a fuck you.
Fuck you, Alyssa.
Situation.
No, 100%.
Like I've been through, like I've come on.
I always think of it whenever people tell me stories like this, like, or I hear stories about people with chronic illnesses or chronic pain, and they finally figure out what it is, where they're just like, fuck you to the 8 doctors before that couldn't figure it out. Like, I knew I was right. Was that your experience?
Exactly. This Danny DeVito looking gynecologist was like, I think your parents owe you an apology.
Good. Yeah. Thank you, Danny DeVito.
Everybody owes you an apology.
Yeah.
I swear to God, I went back, I saw him again, and I was like, no, it wasn't just the anesthesia. He really did.
Yeah.
He was Danny DeVito.
It was him. He was just moonlighting for a gynecology position.
I mean, what more? It's called variety. Being well-rounded.
Yeah, shake it up a little bit. You never know what skill you're going to need later in life. Well, I feel like that is a very full and like comprehensive depiction of what a lot of people go through. Obviously, your situation is very unique, but a lot of people go through a lot to get to the point where they're at with therapy, with physical health care and everything. When all of that was said and done, what was your experience like finding this newest therapist that you've been with for 2 years?
So for the newest therapist, I was able to, it was the emailing situation. And definitely she was younger. She was a woman. Honestly, I don't really care about the gender of a therapist. I've seen both types of people. My main thing has been like the neurodivergence of it all. I've had therapists get upset with me if I don't make eye contact with the camera, you know, or you have therapists who are just like, spit it out, talk faster. No. And so it was, she has ADHD, but I was the one to tell her. I thought she had ADHD. I thought she knew. She didn't know.
Oh, no. That's so funny.
And, especially when it comes to, the thing is, you can call this an insane and unique situation, but it's not actually as uncommon as we think. I posted about it on Reddit at one point, and I think I helped 10 different women figure out that this was what had happened to them.
Yeah.
And it, I had a mom message me and say, my daughter just got her period. She tried to use a tampon. It got stuck and we had to go to the ER.
Goodness.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
And, apparently a lot of women's health isn't recorded. It's one of the least researched fields in many ways. It's either that or gastro. But this is, people have different variations of their organs all the time. And it's funny that we tend to ignore that when it comes to at least female organs, or at least ignore that it's there, especially if because no one wants to go to the gynecologist. The gynecologist is not the best place to be.
Yeah.
And so it's once I started posting about it on Reddit, I realized that they say it's supposed to be 1 in 7,000. Initially they said, because there's different variations of abnormalities. Yeah. But in general, it's pretty much, I think it's 1 in 10,000. Oh, that's just not that uncommon.
No, that isn't at all.
Yeah.
Jeez. And it took that many gynecologists to figure it out?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And I mean, in many ways I did grow up religious and without a lot of sex ed. So.
Yeah, and we're kind of heading into another dark time where sex education is kind of being pushed out the window. All education is being pushed out the window. But not having someone at least explain the basics to you, you're not going to have a very successful and healthy sex life later in life if you didn't learn it during your, formative years when you're going through puberty, and especially for someone in your situation where you had this very unique experience. Well, not as unique as we thought.
More strange.
Yeah, strange 1 in 10,000 experience. You never would have known until, you tried to use a tampon for the first time. And I feel like, was that a scary experience for you when you couldn't really...
when I couldn't figure it out?
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? God, this isn't God's plan.
Yeah. God doesn't want this to happen. So,
no.
Oh, well.
I'm just going to move on. It's fine.
So, yeah, that's crazy. So this therapist you've been with for 2 years, you already said that you like her a lot.
Yeah.
Are there any aspects that you might not like as much about her?
I do feel like it's mainly a lot of our work is more slow because I feel like a lot of the crucial realizations in therapy that you want out of it are like things in many ways you have to do on your own.
Yeah.
Like you can't have someone hold your hand through it.
Yeah, definitely.
And so like while I have, a list of coping mechanisms, I can go through like 4 weeks and go, well, I don't feel any better.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't working.
Yeah.
But in many ways, like if you're not worse, that's always a positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can have a gradient for these things. But I do feel like it's hard. When I first started therapy, I started from workbooks, which feel childish but can't help.
100%. Yeah.
And so having the difference of just like there's only so much you can do for yourself in this period of time when you have chronic pain.
Yeah.
It can make therapy feel unproductive.
Yeah.
And so it's less about her and more just about like CBT in general, I feel is a much more approach.
Yeah.
Like it's trial and error.
It is. Yeah. And CBT, like from its inception, has been a lot about like, it's not self-therapy, but it's the client doing a lot of the work outside of therapy.
Yeah.
CBT loves homework. And I liked what you said about when you're not getting worse, it's still a success.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of people may have the misconception that therapy means that you get better in like a specific amount of time, and especially with CBT, because CBT therapy really pushes for clients to graduate. There's no like specific time in which they want people to graduate, but unlike psychodynamic or psychoanalytic, where that's like you go to your analyst for the rest of your life, CBT has this I'm not going to say expectation, I'm going to say connotation that you have to at some point go off on your own and use the skills that you learned. Yeah. And
I started in dialectical behavioral therapy, which is specifically is harm prevention for people who immediately want to kill themselves. That's how it's marketed. And so you hit the end of DBT and you're like, you haven't killed yourself. Success.
Good job.
And CBT is like you have to create your own expectations for yourself. And especially when it's talk based and it's not homework based. It's because once you start talking, eventually you're going to hit something that's true.
Yeah, exactly. You may not start something that I've experienced in therapy is I might not start the sentence where I think that I'll get something. But by the end of it, it's a run-on sentence. I find, I find the thing that I wanted to share. Just a fun fact about DBT. The founder of DBT has borderline personality disorder, and in her memoir, she writes about her experience with BPD, and then at some point she like came out and was like, I don't have BPD, which is a very BPD thing to do.
Isn't that like in the top, there's 9 traits of BPD and that's like 4.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, we talked about it. We didn't read it for anything, but it's just something that we talked about a lot in class, where it was just like, oh yeah, that sounds a little bit like she might actually have BPD.
Maybe she's not lying.
Yeah. Well, so we know what you like and what you dislike. With therapy as a whole, I know that you mentioned CBT and DBT. Is there a specific modality that you prefer over the next one, or a combination of the ones that you've worked with that you like?
It depends on the current issues that you have.
For sure.
I know for getting through a lot of my issues with OCD, a workbook helped. But when it comes to like chronic illness and chronic pain, you don't want to be thinking, you don't want to be sitting there doing a workbook. And that's a lot more like prevention based in many ways, of like, here's the things that you should do before things get worse so you don't screw yourself over later. Nothing. And it's so for a lot of it, I think talk therapy is helpful, just because, especially as someone who's neurodivergent, it's really like there's not that many people you talk to in your day-to-day, especially about like the things that, because I'm not the biggest journaler. Everyone loves journaling, not into it.
I can't stick to it. I'll get a couple of days and
It's
then
not for
it'll.
me.
Yeah.
I look back and I go, ew.
I know.
Same.
And I'm not very good at spelling without autocorrect. So I'm like writing and I'm like, oh, I have to either commit to not spelling this correctly or like getting to the point where I Google it and then that kind of takes me out of the journey.
I know. I still can't spell restaurant.
Oh my god. Don't even.
My handwriting.
Don't even. I can do it when I'm like texting, but if you give me a pen and pencil right now, I'm not gonna. Or a pen and paper, I'm not gonna do it right now. Yeah, if you give me both writing utensils, I definitely
You have a double chance of doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I like that. That's the approach that you have, is because I think that a lot of what held me back from choosing like a modality or finding a therapist that specifically focused in a modality was because I didn't know what I needed at the time.
Oh yeah.
And especially with like early diagnosis for adult ADHD and my bipolar 2 disorder, I didn't know what kind of therapy I wanted to do, because I did have a CBT therapist earlier in my like therapy career. And I thought that that was like the gold standard of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it is kind of this propaganda that a lot of people fall for, is that CBT is the best because it like is so empirically researched and it's shown that it has been. But for a lot of people, it isn't what they need. It's not something that's going to effectively work for them and their problems. So putting that out there to the public, to the audience, like you just did, is like, it depends on what the presenting problem is.
Yeah. Especially because things like after a few years of this,
Mm-hmm.
it's week by week.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. That's a really good way to put it. I know that you have shared a lot of your medical history and your negative experiences with doctors, with therapists and everything. Is there a distinct therapy horror story that you can come up with or want to share with the audience?
Hold on. I have a notes app.
Can you stick your face in front of the camera and look to see if the timer is still going up? I'm sorry, I needed to figure this camera thing out.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta figure out like not the...
There you go. No, not.
I don't know what you guys want from me.
Not legs apart.
All right. No one's gonna see my crotch.
Okay.
We're good. Okay, and we're back.
Well, I have like a top 3.
Okay, I like that.
Definitely my very first therapist, when I was describing my intrusive thoughts, went, have you considered that you're schizophrenic?
Oh my goodness.
And first of all, schizophrenia in women, you get schizophrenia, I think, late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, that's like the most common.
Yeah, it's not a common thing,
Yeah.
especially in women.
Uh-huh.
But
that's not something the therapist should do.
I went,
Yeah.
were you just like thinking about this earlier? And you were like, you know
Yeah.
what, this would be fun to do.
Oh
This would be
my
I feel
gosh.
like knowledge for OCD, like,
Yeah.
not necessary.
Like maybe you're just thinking about things that weren't there.
Yeah. And that's not a diagnosis that many therapists are going to be taking care of. That's that's kind of one of the big ones where you aren't really you do know enough about it to suggest it, but that is not the approach to suggesting it. That's
Don't be for 20 minutes.
Yeah. that is a referral kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other would be the military therapist who just stared off into space, played on her phone.
Oh no. Oh my god.
Suggested the vagina monologues.
No.
Just very strange.
If you're a therapist watching this, attunement relies on paying attention to your client. You can't have a good relationship. Take notes. Do something. Don't play on your phone.
I'm looking and I'm like, I'm betting today she's going to be playing like Tetris. Or
that is so many things wrong
Tetris
with
or like
that.
those matching games. Or like Candy Crush.
Oh, you know what? Candy Crush? Maybe a valid choice. I'm kidding.
I say this as I'm on level 1,000.
Literally.
Oh my god.
Can't stop.
And I'm gonna re-download Candy Crush after this.
I know. The addiction gene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there. And you had one more?
And the therapist who, when I was over 18, told my parents what was happening in therapy.
Not only is that
illegal.
Wrong, it is illegal, breaches the code of ethics. Yeah, that's not something good. I wasn't 18, but I did have a therapist that kind of just like let my mom in on the secrets, and I was like, damn it. How dare you?
I thought this was for us.
Yeah, this was between you and me. You said so. You said so.
I know. For my newest therapist, I went, you have to promise me.
Yeah.
You have to tell me.
And
She's kept her promise.
Yeah.
I think that
she handwrites her notes too.
Good. Yeah. You gotta double lock your notes. It has to be behind a locked door and in a safe for your progress notes. I thought that brought up something for me in the sense that you have one bad experience with a therapist and it's conditioned you to approach every therapist like that. Was that like something that you
it's a litmus
resonates?
test.
Yeah.
You have to, I mean, even in telling an insane story like this, like I have a double vagina, people are gonna have a response. That's insane.
100%.
That's not that's not a sentence the monkey has typed on the typewriter. Like no. And so like then you're either gonna get hit with like a blank stare, you're gonna get hit with like the pity, like, you know, this is part of God's plan for you. Like it varies. And so based on that response, it's pretty easy to tell, like when you hit them with that shock, their gut response is gonna say what it needs to. Yeah.
Definitely. It's just those three are so crazy, and I'm sorry that you had those experiences, but it seems like you're in a better spot with this new therapist.
The trick is, once you find a decent therapist,
stick with them. Yeah, 100%.
People are like, you should graduate in therapy. I'm like, why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
We got plenty to
if things
through.
If things are better, like, why would you want to?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, like, you don't necessarily have to, graduate from a therapist, but you can space out the time in between sessions, and and you guys can, take a break, and you can come back to them when new issues present themselves. And I think that's something that I love about therapy is that you can take time away from a therapist and then come back to them and just be like, guess what? This is what happened in the past year that I haven't seen you, and then just continue with that relationship that you have.
Yeah.
If there's one thing or a few things that you could share with the audience about therapy that might motivate someone who's on the fence, or something that you think would help someone figure out whether or not they want to actually attend therapy, what would that be?
One therapist is not every therapist, and if you get a bad one, it's going to be probably funny, and you get to talk about it later.
Yeah, funny
so
in hindsight.
Doesn't mean it's not a moral failing situation. It doesn't mean, and especially like all these, fighting with all these insurance people and fighting with therapists, like you're gonna probably get a good story out of it.
Yeah,
and it's not like there are many levels above you as they're with their menacing tone. Like, like if your therapist says you're schizophrenic, you go, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then you change providers.
Yeah.
And even if you get like the insane things, it's not, most of the time it's not personal.
Yeah.
These people don't know you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not every therapist is the same.
It's a roulette.
That's a positive
you
and negative.
spin the wheel and you see what psycho you get.
Yeah, exactly. And I think someone else said it on the show or the podcast, whatever you want to call it, where it was like you can shop around for therapists. Yeah. You can do 1 or 2 sessions, and if it doesn't work out, you can just move on to the next one. And obviously that's a very tedious and laborious task to do, but I think that it is worthwhile at the end of the day to shop around, because just because you think that the first session went well, that doesn't mean that the second, third, and fourth ones are going to go well, because the first session is just introducing yourself, learning about your new provider, and them learning about you, and you get to the second session, you start actually working on stuff, and you're like, wow, this fucking sucks.
I hate you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you were really good in the first session, but now that I'm like getting to experience the way that you practice, I'm not a fan. Yeah, I think that's a really good thing for someone to hear. that not all therapists are created equal. There's good ones, there's bad ones,
and they can lie about it on the internet.
100%.
And at least like Psychology Today makes it more fun when you watch their videos. It's kind of like watching TikToks.
I'm so excited because
yeah.
No, it's really
100%.
fun.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to put out there. Are there any questions that you have for me about therapy, about drag, about grad school, or anything?
Oh my god. So, how long have you? I know you switched characters.
Yeah.
Right? I can't remember the last character's name, unfortunately.
It's okay. She's dead. She's not here anymore. She's no longer with us.
Are you on Sara Quill?
I am on Sara Quill. Yeah,
I just figured I'd ask.
Yeah, I am. I've been on Sara Quill for about 5 years now. I was diagnosed bipolar 2 in fall of 2020, and Sara Quill was the first prescription that I was put on. And since that point, I've worked my way up to, at one point, the highest dose, and then we dropped down 100 milligrams, and we've kind of been like dabbling in between the highest dose and like a medium dose. But yeah, Sara Quill is the one I've been on the longest, and it's the one that I attribute to a lot of my stability in life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
See, there's no fun drag name for Lamictal.
No, seriously, I was trying to make it work because I'm on Lamictal too. I was like, Sara Quill and Lamictal are like your bipolar cocktail.
Yeah, for me, it's citalopram and Lamictal.
Yeah, Lamictal, and like...
It's a beautiful drug.
Lamotrigine is another way of word. I think
it's the same drug.
Yeah, I think Lamictal is the
brand name.
The brand name, and Lamotrigine. I was like, I could do Lamotrigine, but it wasn't. It doesn't come off the tongue.
Lamotrigine.
That could work. Yeah, Lamotrigine.
Like JEAN.
Yeah. I think that I think Sara Quill.
Sara Quill.
Sara Quill just like,
so good.
because it's like it could be a real name. In fact, there's an author named Sara Quill. So
do you think she knows?
I don't think so. She doesn't know about me, that's for sure. But I know about her. I'm coming for you, Sara Quill.
You want the username?
I do. It's no fair. Yeah. But yeah, I am on Sara Quill, and yeah, Jolene Cuisine is dead.
Oh. But I do love the name Jolene.
I know. She lives on in our hearts. Yeah.
So wait, how long have you been doing drag?
I've been doing drag for 4 years, give or take. Yeah, dabbling in drag. It started off with Paige and I watching like Trixie and Katya, and I really wanted to do it myself. So Paige would put me up in drag, and I would get into a little sultry outfit, and I would go on Omegle while streaming to my friends, and just kind of mess with people. And it wasn't. Yeah, we made some friends out of it, and it wasn't necessarily something that I was doing for like the comedy of it. Like it was something that I went on Omegle, and we had a lot of fun, but at the same time I answered a lot of questions about like why I was doing drag, and I think that it enlightened a lot of people who might not have experience with it. But it kind of stopped after a month or two of it, just because it gets old. So more recently, we've been watching Drag Race, and I was like, okay, I think that getting back into it and finding a way to incorporate it into other passions of mine. So very consistently for almost 2 months now, I've been doing drag.
Therapy as a drag is a great name. I told my therapist this morning, and she screamed.
One of my professors was like, "Is that not taken?" And I was like, "It is taken by me now."
Yeah.
It is YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. It's all me. I just got to get the domain name at this point. Yeah, I was very excited when it like came to me when I was driving to class one day.
Oh my god!
Yes. Works.
So you're in grad school. So how, like, is there a specific degree that you get to become a therapist that you...
Yeah.
Like, how does that work?
For at least in California, and pretty much universally across the United States, you have to have a master's degree.
Right.
In the program that I'm in, you get a master's of science in counseling psychology. A lot of programs will do like Masters of Science in Marriage and Family Therapy or clinical counseling and stuff like that, but pretty much it's all the same. It's just most programs, not all, will prepare you and get you qualified to sit for the marriage and family therapy exam, the licensing exam. And some programs do where you could sit for the marriage and family therapy exam and the professional clinical counselor exam. So luckily my program does both. So if I want, I can sit for both. If I want to just do one, I can do just one. But yeah, that's the degree kind of thing.
I know my therapist, in order to become a sex therapist, it was also grad school. But I also know that the girl behind her was always making Jane Hill.
That's so funny.
Fashions.
Yeah. That's
so
awesome.
I know there's different types, but like obviously, there's only so much I know.
Yeah, sex therapy is a whole different thing.
It's a ballpark. And of course, you're gonna get like the bored housewives, or you're gonna get people who like have insane experiences for no reason.
Yeah. Secret Life of Mormon Wives.
So what made you want to become a therapist?
I think, to speak on the like cliche side of things, is that I've had so much experience with therapy, just with general problems as a teenager and with addiction counseling when I was first getting sober, and learning coping mechanisms before I was prescribed stimulants for ADHD and stuff. And it was just something that really stood out to me as a profession that I wanted to pursue because I got so much out of therapy. And I feel like obviously lived experience is a very small part of how you approach therapy from a clinician standpoint. But I feel like the lived experience that I have gives me a unique perspective on what it means to sit down and do a therapy session as someone on the other side of the table. So I think the cliche aspect of things is that I wanted to help people, and I wanted to help people that were in similar situations to myself. So adolescent substance use disorder is something that I'm really interested in. Adult substance use disorder maintenance is something that I'm really interested in, and I just wanted to take everything that I've experienced and put it towards helping other people. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not interesting. That's probably if you ask someone why do you want to become a therapist, you'd hope for a good answer like that.
They're not doing it for the money, that's for sure. It's a profession that is fairly stable and will always need therapists, but you're not going to become a millionaire doing it.
And people are, well, it's again like, do you want to have a job where you get stories out of it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't link the names, but you can still.
Yeah. I hear incredible stories from my professors, both good and bad. But yeah, it's always kind of an uncomfortable feeling because you're like, wow, this person that they're talking about will never know that they just shared it with 30 master's students. But yeah, there's some crazy stories.
At least my therapist tells me.
Yeah.
She's like, hey, spoke about you earlier this week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's where my mindset was when I started applying to grad school.
Cool. So okay, you do have a BA in psychology.
I do, yeah. It's up there. Yeah, and you don't have to have a bachelor's in psychology. I have classmates who did accounting. I have classmates that did cognitive science, which is close enough. There are people. One of my professors who's a psychologist. She has a doctorate. She was an English major before she went to grad school. So I mean, you can write a strong essay, talk about your lived experience, they'll let you in.
I feel like it's that way for all grad school, though.
Yeah.
That's why you're telling you're like, hey, crazy life story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. From what I've heard from other people that have gone to grad school for like STEM, you kind of have to be a math major or something to get to that point.
As someone who's in math.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, you have to you go to a professor and they're like, why couldn't you turn this in? And you go,
you just drop that and they're like, all right, you get an extension.
Oh yeah. You'd be shocked. It works every time.
That's so funny. Well, if you don't have any other questions for me,
good.
I think we're good. Well, I cannot thank you enough for being on this episode. I mean, I was so excited when Paige told me that you were going to fill out the little intake form, because although I love my family and coworkers, it was so nice to have this different experience with interviewing someone that I don't know so well, and I feel like I learned so much about you, beyond your experience with therapy, and it was just such a pleasure having you.
Lay it all out there.
Yeah, exactly. I really appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability, and I cannot thank you enough for being my guest. So with that, we bid you adieu. Thank you guys. Bye.